spread throughout from Jackie in Virginia to you up in Maine and everywhere in between.
And if you want to make me co-host so I can share my PowerPoint.
Yeah, let me do that. Whoops, wait a minute, wrong one. Alrighty, we are shared. And it's all yours. Let me start off.
We'll wait a little bit, right? You want to wait a little bit, see if people trickled in.
Yeah, there's a few more trickling in. First off, I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's Share the Knowledge meeting. It's our the HCRA mini meeting. Everybody's welcome to join us. And tonight it's on DStar, everything you want to know about DStar. We had a meeting on DMR a couple of years ago. And I think the last time we had a DStar meeting was quite a while ago. So it should be interesting, especially with so many people getting interested in different digital modes. Welcome aboard, everybody. And our guest tonight is Cory. He's from Sebattis, Maine. Is that where you are?
Very good. Yes, that is correct.
And which is what, sort of central Maine?
I consider it southern central. I mean, it's 90 miles to Portsmouth, New Hampshire from here.
Okay.
So you figure 95 goes 302 miles, so you're just getting into the state, you know.
Sounds good. I'm going to ask everybody if they can turn off the ringers on their phones so that they don't or put them on mute. And, so if the phones ring, they don't interrupt the meeting. And if you've got TVs or radios on in the background, if you could turn the volume off or down. You've got animals in the background or people speaking. If you could, we'll just ask everybody to mute their microphones while the guest speaker is speaking. And we'll let Cory decide how he wants to handle the questions. And
I say fire away when you have them, because you know what, you might think, oh, I'll ask it at the end, then you forget, right? We're all getting older and sometimes we tend to forget. It's like, interrupt me at any point. Ask away.
Sounds good. All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to Cory. The floor is yours, my friend. Take it away.
Well, thank you very much. I knew Larry was desperate when he was asking me for knowledge. It's like, oh my goodness, you misguided soul, you, if you're asking me for any knowledge I have. But it's been great to, meet Larry over the last year, and we've been in touch quite a bit. Let me share my screen here. DStar is something I'm really passionate about. I really, really enjoy it. I'm a communicator. I love experimenting with different modes. And let's see what happened here. I gotta share my screen here. Just let me know if you are seeing my screen okay. Are you seeing that?
I am seeing it.
Perfect.
Looks good.
All right. DStar. DStar is, one of my favorite digital voice modes. Well, you notice I didn't say my favorite digital mode. There's only one favorite digital mode above DStar. Can anyone guess what it is? You got it. Yes, that's right. All right. I love CW. I'm not great at it, but you know what? You always got to aspire to something. A good ham told me, if you're copying 100%, then you're not copying fast enough. That's what I was told anyway. So DStar, what is it? It stands for Digital Smart Technologies for Amateur Radio. That's actually what that acronym stands for. It's been around for a while, 2004. All right. And even though it's a digital voice mode, it's digital mode. When you think of digital, you think the digital end of the band. But actually, they do consider it a voice mode. So it's actually in the voice portion of the HF bands and other bands. So it's, just like you have repeaters, they're on regular repeater frequencies. They're not down near APRS or packet or anything like that. Even though it's digital, it's still considered voice modes. All right. Very narrow banded. All right, very spectrum efficient. Stop and think about it. You could fit four D-Star repeaters in the bandwidth of a regular 25 kilohertz FM repeater. So uses very minimal amount of space when you think about it. You know, I think a lot of people get confused when when they're talking about digital, and I don't think they understand what digital is all about. So, people get on their high horse and say, oh, the audio is horrible, this, that, the other thing. Okay, if you want good audio, go do AM, go do FM, go do something like that. Digital is not about having supreme audio quality. Digital is about bringing multiple things to the table at once. That's what's nice about digital. So when you can key up the radio and I can talk to Don as I have in the past, and I see its call sign right away, I can see the GPS location. I can do all these things at once that we're going to talk about in this presentation. All of this at the same time. That's the beauty of digital. Now, in terms of audio quality, I mean, it is important. I mean, it does have a more robotic sound when you compare it to analog, right? Because let's face it, it is digital. It's converting that codec over to something that we can understand. So relatively speaking, yeah, it does have a more robotic quality. But I'll tell you, some of these vocoders have come a long way. Some sound more horrendous than others. I don't know. Just to me, my ear, I don't care for the audio quality of DMR like I do for DStar. I think DStar, to me, to my ear, has a better audio quality than some of these other modes. All right. What are the benefits? What's good about DStar? Well, it's narrow bandwidth, so we can have a lot more spectrum for others to share. All right. We got some relative privacy there, right? You have to have a another DStar radio to hear it. So if you got an analog scanner or a P25 radio, that's not going to decode your DStar. So a little bit of privacy there. You get that simultaneous text display. All right. So you can put in your name. It's really great if you got a name that has 4 or less letters in it, because that field for where you could put your radio, you could put your name, it works out really handy. I luck out. I max out at 4, Cory, so I'm good. Don's good. He's got 3 letters in his name, so it works out nicely for us. But you can also put an additional text message in there. Sometimes I'll put try QRP, or you put anything you want in there. As you're talking, that text message, it will display while you're talking. There is an integration with the APRS IS system. So it will feed one way over to the APRS system. So if you go to like APRS.fi, you can and you have your GPS turned on. And every time you key up, it sends out, it beacons out that location. You can actually go on and see that on the APRS server. Digital in general, which DStar falls under that, it has a better coverage curve compared to analog. You probably heard of that waterfall, that cliff effect, where with analog, as the signal goes down, it degrades quickly. But digital, everyone says you're either there or you're not. And that's pretty true, right? You're either going to hear a digital transmission or you're not. I mean, that cutoff is so sharp. It takes nothing to either be there or not. It can be used in an electronically noisy environment. You can still hear that digital audio coming through. You've got DStar has it's not overrun it's not over inundated with any of these. Well, this is where my application's old. That has changed. I take that back. And there's something called Peanut, Don. Have you used the Peanut app? Used to be there weren't really many apps that were overflowing the DStar networks, but now we do have some apps out there that are allowing you to bridge over to DStar, and that's anything, not just DStar, DMR, Fusion, whatever. But so that's old. I have to take that out of my presentation. Hams, we're experimenters at heart, aren't we? We love doing this stuff. I mean, so essentially, when we're doing DStar, we're actually quasi experimenting with like APCO's phase 2 narrow banding, right? The phase 1 narrow banding, that's when back in 2013 there was a public safety mandate where everything in public safety had to go, it was a federal mandate, you had to go from 25 kilohertz down to 12.5. Well, the phase 2 is going from 12.5 down to 6.25. And that's really the comfort zone of where DStar operates. All right, it's all within a 6.25 kilohertz bandwidth. So we're experimenting with that far ahead of what APCO is actually getting to push out their phase 2 stuff. And to me, it's really a great allocation of voice and data, that simultaneous use. I'm a history major, so I like to talk about the bad as much as I like to talk about the good. I'm not going to sell you a pipe dream and say, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. What are the disadvantages? Well, it's expensive. Let's not kid ourselves. DStar is a lot more expensive to like DMR or buying a Bofang, right? You get a Bofang for what, $25, $30. DStar radios. What's that new one that just came out? The ID52?
Yeah, it's $650.
600. It gives me heart I love DStar, but I get heart palpitations when I think of $650 for a dual band handheld. Ooh, it's color. Okay, great. Thanks. I'm all set. I'm still not going to pay that money for a handheld that's that much. I'd rather spend $650 on the Kenwood, that D74, which we'll talk about in a little bit. At least you get more bang for your buck. There seems to be with these modes a high reliance of internet communication. At the end of the day, internet is how we link. I don't know where we started going wrong, but all of a sudden we got away from RF linking, microwave linking, and we figured, oh, okay, let's just start internet linking. It won't be bad. And then we kind of got really dependent on it. We got away from that mantra that ARRL pushed years ago: when all else fails, internet can fail. We really need to have a more resilient connection system. I would love to see, mesh networking get pushed to the forefront. I'd love to see DStar repeaters get linked via microwave. That would be a great thing. So there tends to be a high reliance of internet. You do not need internet to talk on DStar, though. It's just one of those convenience factors. It allows you another way to link into various parts of the country or world or different states. But there does tend to be that high reliance of internet communication linked with this. And it's not just DStar, DMR, any of these modes, even Echo Link, IRLP, all that sort of stuff. DStar is not everyone's cup of tea. Some people don't care for the quality of DStar. You get people who are really into audio quality and they figure, what, DStar, I don't really like the sound of it. Not for me. The lack of acceptance by other manufacturers. ICOM is certainly the leader in this, but even they're starting to shun away from some of it. I kind of pinned somebody in the corner at a national meeting. I said, how come you don't make DStar available on a 7300? Boy, does that really fry my butt, because they advertise the 7300 alongside that beautiful 9700. The 9700 has DStar built in. You would assume the 7300 would have it. No, it doesn't. Why not have it? So, I asked the question, let's talk about the elephant in the room. How come, are you going to put that option in there? No, we thinking maybe DStar is too wide for HF. I don't know. That sounded like a cop-out to me because they certainly don't have a problem pushing out DStar in the 705s that are flying off the shelf. So I don't know. I didn't really care for the answer I saw on that. But anyway, the other disadvantage, we got too many competing digital modes, right? It's like the VHS Betamax war times 10. I mean, we are in such a format war. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, how many digital modes can you name, right? So you got DStar, DMR, NICSTED, DPMR, although DPMR is not in the United States. You've got all these digital modes. It's P25. When's it going to stop? I mean, it's tough to, try staying married if you say, well, I got to buy a radio for this mode. I got to buy a radio for this mode. I mean, at what point do you say I have to stop buying radios just to talk on a certain mode? So those are some of the disadvantages. The biggest is being the cost. Cost is quite high when it comes to DStar. Let's talk about the other elephant in the room. Will DStar replace analog? People think, oh, I don't want you imposing on this. I don't want analog. No, DStar is never going to replace analog. All right. Hopefully, analog's here to stay for a very long time. Although up here, I don't know how it is down your way in Massachusetts, but up here, analog is very quiet these days. Is it the same down there? Are you starting to find that it's becoming
In
more
this area,
fractured?
in this area, FM is virtually dead.
Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, that's where everyone starts, and so I mean, is DStar going to replace analog? No. I mean, I joke with people who get all these digital handhelds, digital radios. I said, did you know that they all come with an interoperable mode? Oh, they get all excited. Really? What's the interoperable mode? Analog. Oh, you stop and think about it. I mean, at the end of the day, we can all talk together. I mean, we do want to strive for interoperability. DStar is just another tool in the toolbox. Like I said, it's not for everybody. I find, sometimes it's not really the mode that people are bothered with. It's the politics. The politics sometimes kills the mode. You get certain repeater organizations, clubs, groups, and they make all these rules and they rule you to death on, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. You can't do this. Well, okay. I thought it was a hobby and I wanted to enjoy talking to people, but they make so many rules where you have to keep this permanently linked and you can't switch it. So I think part of that is, it's not the technology, it's the politics that's really, really hurting some of these modes. So again, we talk about the expense. Expense to me is a relative term. I don't think things are expensive if you get your use out of them. That's the big thing. All right. If you're good, some people say, oh, well, that's X amount of money for that radio. Boy, that's a lot of money. Well, I could argue the same for $100 DMR radio. If you never use the thing, then that $100 was a lot if you never picked it up and used it. Right? It's all about utility. It's cost benefit ratio. So to me, expense is a relative term. Although, you look at DMR, things can run the gamut, right? You can get the less expensive, and I have several of them, like the GD77s. But you can get really expensive with that stuff. Any Motorola fans out there? Motorola, or what's the other one? Hytera? Those are expensive monoband radios. I mean, you're spending several hundreds of dollars with just that for a monoband. So, just like any hobby, expense is relative, right? The more you get into something, the higher your budget tends to go, and the more you want to get into it and upgrade your equipment. DStar does use an AMB vocoder chip. All right, that does attribute to the higher cost. Okay, that's what gives it the digital quality, is it has that vocoder chip in it. All right. I like to think costs are coming down, but now again, outdated slide is that everything's going up in price right now, and now we have a chip shortage, right? So that doesn't help matters. That just compounds matters. The other big debate I hear, oh, DStar's proprietary. One, they think it's proprietary. The second, they think it's proprietary to ICOM. It's not. Nope. ICOM just said, hey, let's get on board with this. All right. So ICOM is the biggest manufacturer that does have DStar equipment, but they're not the only ones. Not many are doing it, but Kenwood. I'm only knowing of the Kenwood handheld. Is anyone else aware of other Kenwood equipment out there using it? I'm only familiar with the D74. Now, the D74, which is a Rockstar handheld, by the way. I love mine. And did you know Flex Radio can do DStar? Did anyone know that?
I did not know
So
that.
those Flex radios, if you buy it's a USB dongle. We're going to talk. I have a picture of it in the slide. I do own one. The DV dongle, not the Flex. I know, disappointing. But if you plug that DV dongle in the back of your Flex radio, it will enable the DStar mode. So then you can talk on HF or 2 meters with your Flex radio. It gives it that ability. So that's kind of nice. Northwest Digital makes that dongle. I think it's like $130 or so. It's called the DV3000. Pretty handy little device. All right. Where we're at, nobody wants to play in the sandbox with each other, right? Yaesu has their mode, System Fusion. ICOM is the largest manufacturer, embracing ICOM. Kenwood is big into the NXTN stuff, NXDN. Nobody wants to play in the sandbox with one another. It's a problem because we have so many different modes out there. It's foolish. So back to the proprietary stuff. DVSI. Has anyone ever heard of DVSI? Well, they're the clever manufacturers who have it's proprietary to them that they put this all on a chip. So DStar is not proprietary. That is an open source mode. What's proprietary about it is DVSI beat everyone to the punch and put it on a chip. They're a business at the end of the day that I believe they deserve to get compensated. It's like, hey, if you want to come up with your own chip and invest the money, go do it. Or you just say, hey, you got the chip, I'll pay you whatever the fee is, I'll put it in my radio. That's where the confusion lies. They think that the DStar is actually proprietary, but it's the DVSI chip that is. So that vocoder, that codec is open source. So some examples of the handhelds. A lot of these are, older, so you probably find them on eBay. You got like the ICOM 80, the 91, 92. A lot of these are dual banders that you can use for DStar. Again, the Kenwood DStar handheld, the D74, which just a great handheld. I love that thing because you can pretty much do everything with it, not just DStar. And it also offers a 220, which I'm a big 220 fan. Full HF receiver in there. I mean, it definitely has a lot of bang for the buck with this radio. Then you got some of the next generation handhelds. I have the 31. I kind of kicked myself in the butt because when I got into DStar, I was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to like it. It's new. I don't know anything about it. So let me just get the monoband 70 centimeter handheld. Now, I should have just ponied up at the time and got the dual bander like the 51. But as the newer generations came on board, they had the GPS built in, which is nice for giving your location. Anyone ever hear the discussions of the CS7000 that Connect Systems talked about many years ago? They had this great idea, and that's all it ever amounted to was an idea. They were going to make a radio. It was going to do DStar, DMR, analog, System Fusion, NXTN, DPMR, and P25. Wow. I want to hear more. Well, it was vaporware. It never came to fruition. Last post I could find was in 2018. There was never any more discussion about it. So I think the idea is dead in the water, but it was a great concept. It just never saw the light of day. Then you got the mobiles, which, when I got into the hobby, 20, 25 some years ago, you could have a handheld and you get into repeater sites. It seems like nowadays you almost need a mobile to get into repeater sites. I don't know if it's like down there, but up here in Maine, we're having a lot of trouble getting and finding various repeater sites to host repeaters. It's becoming a difficult, daunting task. I've got the 880, great little mobile. The only downside is doesn't have the GPS in it. It actually you can actually see how the family kind of develops over time. See how they all have kind of the same look. Nowadays, like the 4100 is like the 880 that I bought, but the major difference is it has the GPS built into it. A lot of people going with the 5100. That seems to be a popular one. I think, Larry, you were talking about going with the 5100. Are you eventually going to pull the trigger on that one? I think that's what you said you wanted to go with. I know you bought a 705, so you know. And then what's cool is 1.2 gig. Is there really any 1.2 gig activity down in Massachusetts, whether it's analog or DStar? You got any 1.2 stuff down there?
George,
Is it
do you
kind
know?
of-
KC1V, do you know?
We only have a 1.2 gig analog machine up there. I'm actually a big fan of 1.2. It's a pretty cool band. And when you get into the DStar stuff, you can actually send relatively high speed data. I say relatively because you know we're used to what packet, what 300 baud packet on HF, 1200 baud on 2 meter. You know the fast stuff, right? You can do 128K transfer on 1.2 gig, which that's pretty cool. We talking on 1.2 gig, being able to send that data transfer, and you can even do it without the repeater. If you've got a good line of sight to somebody, pretty neat stuff. Here's where I think DStar actually shines. All right, because you can use DStar on HF, and I think that is pretty darn cool. All right. So I've got the 7100. I love that radio. It's like become my favorite radio of all time. I always tell people, hey, if you can only buy one radio, for me, if I had to do it all over, I could only get one. It'd be the 7100. 160 through 10, 6.2, 440. Just it does everything you need it to. One of these days, I hope to get a 9100. That's on my wish list, only because I really want a 23 centimeter radio. I know I could get a 9700, but that's just VHF and UHF, SHF. I like to. I'm a big fan of all in one box, being able to go DC to daylight. So how do I access DStar? All right, there's the best way to do it, repeater. Then you can got a good footprint. If you get your repeater in a good location, you can chat with other people. But nowadays we're finding a lot more people are using and accessing DStar through a hotspot. So a hotspot is a small little device that's kind of taken over the digital voice community in ham radio. They're multi-mode, right? So your hotspot, you can actually set yours to scan multiple modes. So on my hotspot, I've got it set to DMR. Well, it's actually DMR to Fusion. I'm cross-moding. I have my DMR to Fusion and also DStar. So I'll monitor different networks on my hotspot. They're only 10 milliwatts. They're very short distance. And then you got the Dvap, which I don't know, you don't really hear about anymore. Dvap was the predecessor to the hotspot. It's a digital voice access point. And it's only DStar. That's the only thing you can do with it. And then you have a DV dongle. If you're a computer user, you don't have a radio, you put the DV dongle, you plug that USB into your computer, and it essentially gives you the vocoder, the codec to be able to operate that mode, connect in on the internet, and then you can come across certain DStar repeaters, whatever network you're connected to. So repeaters, up top you've got the popular DStar repeater. I think they've just come out with a new generation of DStar repeaters. I think it's called G3. I don't know much about that yet, but you've got other manufacturers that are trying to hop on the digital voice, not just DStar, but any digital mode, digital voice bandwagon, right? So Bridgecom is one of those companies. So at the bottom there, you can see the Bridgecom repeater with an MMDVM board. So the MMDVM board is essentially pretty much like a Raspberry Pi with the vocoders in it. So that's what's giving your digital voice quality to the repeater. So with these repeaters, you have to make sure that you have like a 9600 baud connector, so you can connect up that MMDVM board, and it can get you your digital quality that you're looking for. So you don't have to have a manufactured digital repeater. You can build your own with the right tools. You got to have that MMDVM digital board, and then a lot of people are preferring having the internet connection, which then they can link to various reflectors, so to speak, your digital talk groups. All right. I have heard that the Icon repeaters, at least the old generation, did have front end receiver issues. Hopefully they've corrected that a little bit with the newer generation. But that's just feedback that I've heard. A friend of mine who runs KS1R repeater over in Phippsburg, Maine. They said you have to make sure you have a really quiet location for the repeater location for some of these. But half this hobby is, experimenting, building. That's what we like to do. We like to build our own equipment and modify it, and just experiment. So repeater call signs. You have a repeater call sign that's attached to the repeater. All right. So you have to program up your radios. We're going to talk about the programming coming up here in some of the slides. In my opinion, is DStar more complicated than System Fusion? Yes. Is DStar less complicated than DMR? Yes. That's my opinion on that. I think the most seamless digital voice mode out there is System Fusion. You plug your call sign in the radio, and that's pretty much it. It's a very intuitive system. I don't think DStar is bad. I don't, in terms of programming, definitely a lot less headache than DMR. Has anyone ever had to program their own, make their own code plug for DMR? Has anyone had the great experience of that? It's a headache, isn't it? I mean, so many fields that you have to go through. It can definitely wear on you looking at all these different fields that you have to put in. With DStar, there's essentially 4 fields that you have to concentrate on, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Just as with any repeater, they have to be coordinated. All right, repeaters are used on 3 different band modules. 3 different bands. We refer to these as modules. All right, so you have module A, B, and C. All right, so let's talk about the difference between band modules and reflector modules. Here's where it starts getting a little bit confusing, but bear with me. Module A is 23 centimeters, so that's your 1.2 gig. Module B is 70 centimeter, and module C is 2 meter. Those are your band modules. Now, the difference is you have modules for reflectors also. All right. Looking at your band module, so if you go to dstarusers.org, this is a screenshot. You can see on the left the call sign, so the one at the top here, IK3DNV. All right. He was going across band module C. All right, he was going through the IR3UEF repeater on module C. And it tells you right here, module C is 2 meters. So if you look down here, module B, so REF, this is a reflector. All right, so this is one of the types of networks that you have on DStar. We call them reflectors. REF090B. B is that 440 module, all right, so 70 centimeter. And then you also might have people just using the dongle. Maybe they don't have a radio, they don't have, they're not near a repeater. Somebody's going in through a reflector 004 and they're a dongle user. So this website kind of spells out where people are coming in from. Now you have reflector modules. So you see at the top linked gateways, module A, B, C, D, okay? And all these repeaters right here. So this is a reflector 50 Charlie. So I hang out on 50 Charlie a lot. That's where I chat with Don. Reflector 50 Charlie is kind of like the New England hangout point. Well, one of 2 New England hangout points. There's another New England hangout point for like Southern New England, which is 69. Is that 69 Charlie, Don? I'm trying to think. I know it's 69. It might be 69 Charlie.
Yeah, it's 69 Charlie.
Okay. So you've got, a lot of people from Connecticut and Massachusetts on 69 Charlie. And then 50 Charlie, you got a mix of like Mass, New Hampshire, Maine. All right. So, but I mean, obviously anyone can connect from everywhere, anywhere, but that's kind of the regular group that hangs on there. So here you can
60
see, yeah, go ahead.
69 Charlie is more Western Mass, Connecticut area.
Okay, very good. So here you can actually see on the link gateway all the repeaters that are connected. So K1HRO-B. So you notice it says B. So B means what? B tells us that's a UHF repeater. So K1HRO, that's a ham radio outlet. That is their 440 repeater in Salem on 440. K1MRA on C, the band module is C, which means 2 meters. W1 DSR B is 440. W1 MRA is a UHF repeater, right? Then you've got your remote users. If you're looking at this dashboard, you can look at all the different users that are connected. If somebody didn't activate and they're just kind of in listening mode, it shows that. But here we have Louis, W1CH. I believe Louis is down in Florida. He was last talking on module C, okay, which means he was over here. That's where 50 Charlie, a lot of people hang out. So again, I talked about having a text message. You can have like a little message that you can program in. Obviously, you have your call sign. I'll tell you, you know why a lot of people like DStar? Because they have like a memory retention of 10 seconds and they forget the name of the person they're talking to. Do any of you have that problem? So it's nice because they key up and they'll see their name. All right. So, you know, they can put their name in there, their location. A lot of people will put their name and location. All right. Or you can just put a random message in there. Okay. Ed, he talks on 50 Charlie a lot, especially in the mornings. He's down in Florida. But the other nice thing about looking at these reflectors, let me go back here. Nice thing about looking at these reflectors is, you notice there's an orange call sign every now and then. If there is an orange call sign, what that means is they've actually transmitted out a GPS location. So if you click on the call sign in the dashboard, it will open up a separate browser and it will open up the Google map and point to right where they are when they're talking to you. So there's nothing you really have to, you can set that to automatically transmit. Every time you key that radio up, it's sending out your location. So, you know, you stop and think about public service events, a walkathon, a bike trek, whatever. That's pretty handy, you know, just you're saving another radio from having to be used. You know, a lot of these events use APRS radio separately from your voice communication radio. Boy, if we actually had a DStar infrastructure, we can eliminate having another radio being used. Okay, so that I find kind of handy. Again, talking about repeaters, your checklist. You know, you need that 9600 baud data port so you can get that connection going. Right. And then you need a GMSK node adapter. So I kind of refer to it as MMDVM board, but officially it's known as a GMSK node adapter. I have to update my slide because this one right here, Moencom board, I do not recommend it. Kind of stay away from those. They're not reliable. The DV repeater boards are really good. I think they stopped making those. I think nowadays it's the MMDVM. MMDVM is really the one you want to be using. One of the first ones that came out was out in Japan, the Satoshi GMSK node adapter. I don't think you can find those anymore. But if you see a DV repeater board or an MMDVM, those are the ones you really want to go with. Next thing you need a computer. Okay, so whether it's using a laptop or a lot of us hams, we like these Raspberry Pis, these little great versatile Linux computers. They don't take up a lot of electricity. They work really well. Some people are even using like Odroid Linux quad core computers. So most of them, you're really going to see that the Raspberry Pi is what's being used. All right, and then you need an image. You need to flash that device with an image. G4KLX has some popular images. VA3UV up in Canada. He's got some interesting software as well. And then you have to have a means of connectivity. All right. How are you going to link these repeaters if you want them linked together? All right. If you're going to be involved in a reflector room, you connect it to the internet. Or let's say you just don't want to have a localized network within your state. You can, do microwave linking. You can use mesh networking. Use some of those Ubiquity rockets. M2 and fighters linked. But again, you don't have to have connectivity. You only need that connectivity if you want to get out onto these larger scale worldwide access groups. People from all over the world can connect in. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong with having a localized repeater that's just a repeater. Sometimes keeping things small, there's nothing wrong with that. You have your regular group of people that you want to chat with, and that's all you want to do. There's nothing wrong with that either. These hotspots, those MMDVM boards, they're really popular. But again, they're only 10 milliwatts. I've seen a lot of the Kenwood radios. You got those, the ones they use for packet or APRS. Those are good because they've already got that 9600 baud. You can make your own higher powered hotspot. And then every now and then on the market, you see these different pieces of equipment come out. Don, I'm trying to think of the one that you have. You have a unique device. Is it called the DV? Not the DV Mega, DV something.
DV Mega. It's a DV Megacast. So it's
Megacast.
basically, it's got its own microphone. It's basically a digital hotspot. It'll do DMR. It'll do Fusion. It'll do DStar. I think now they might be capable of doing P25. They might have upgraded it by now. I haven't been using it lately, but it's a nice little device. Just plugs right into the internet. If you want to just set it in the house, set it up, leave it, and it's got a touch screen, the touch screen on it to change everything in it. It's not a bad little device.
Very good. So these hotspots, while a lot of them are 10 milliwatts or less, you can create your own higher powered hotspot. Say you want something, 5, 10, 20 watts, whatever. The nice thing about a hotspot is simplex. It's not a repeater. So therefore, technically, you don't have to coordinate it because it's not a repeater. It's only on a simplex frequency. So depending on what you're trying to achieve for your group, if everyone's close enough, you've got an area, you could put it up high, and people in a neighborhood or whatever, or local group, maybe don't need a repeater. Just being in range of hearing that hotspot, and if you can hit it, hey, that might serve the purpose without having to go through the hassle of coordinating a repeater. So here's a little system diagram. All right. So you got your radio that goes in to the hotspot or the repeater. All right. You got your computer with the node adapter, and it can go through the internet. Go through the repeater, depending if you're going through the network or not. Lots of options to do. It's whatever you like. Some people don't want that connectivity. They just want to keep to themselves, and they don't want to have that large access ability. Not a problem with that. The Dvap, again, digital voice access point. Again, those are 10 milliwatts, not very powerful. So really, they're essentially for setting up inside your house and using around the yard. It's pretty much what it's going to do. You got the Mega DV, you've got all sorts of different variations of these that are out there. So top left, that's what the Dvap actually looks like. You got a DV3000 that's added onto a Raspberry Pi stack. All sorts of different experimentation items that you can build and play with. Then what you do essentially is you do have to connect that into the internet, and that's what gets you connected to the larger network. The DV dongle, that's essentially all it is. There's no radio involved on the user's end. You're plugging that in. That has a little cord that plugs into the left side there. You plug that into your computer, you load up your software, and you essentially put on a headset and click the PTT button on the software, and you're connected to your DStar network talking away. This is the Northwest Digital Radio, their vocoder. This is a device that you can actually plug into the back of a Flex radio, and that will give it that DStar option to talk. That's outdated too because oh, okay, no, that's right, about $120. That's correct. That's about what they run. All right, so you got your device. What do you do next? How do you get started? Well, you have to register into the DStar network. Okay, you have to register your call into what's called the US Trust server. Any of you familiar with the WB1GOF system? Any of the folks over there at the Westford PART? Was it PART? I believe that's what they're called, right? Terry, you know Terry Stater? Terry is like one of the top gurus I know of, system admin for DStar. He helps us with maintain our system up here in Maine. He helps a lot, troubleshooting anything we need done, telling us how to set up our system. He does a lot with the registration of call signs. So when you register your call sign, it has to be approved. I know HRO says they'll do it, but what you really should be doing is registering with whatever local group, the nearest DStar repeater you have to you. And you don't want to register in multiple places. You only want to register once. If you're registered in multiple places, that can cause a problem. Don, when you registered, who'd you go through? Did you go through WB1GOF to register?
I believe I went through Brad at the time, W1BP.
Oh, okay.
Registered me originally.
Very good. And where does he do that through? Do you know what system?
He's now a silent key, so I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. So we have, up here, KS1R is kind of like one of the only games in town for DStar repeaters. Up here in Maine, everyone kind of went gaga over DMR and didn't really want to give DStar a chance, but a lot of people will see a lot of registrations come through the KS1R system. So for us on this system, you sign in, you click on register at the bottom, and then you have to agree to the document, and you put all your information in, your call sign, name, email, come up with a password. And then here's the tricky part. This is where it gets a little tricky. On the personal info tab, all right, you have to, you have to go under initial and hit the space bar once. That's the really tricky thing. All right, you have to put a space in the initial field because that's your band designator. If you had a repeater that you were registering, you would put like B if it was like a UHF repeater, a C if it was a 2-meter repeater, and then click RPT for repeater. But we leave RPT unchecked because we're not doing any repeaters. That's probably the most complicated thing in terms of registration. I really wish they would make it simpler. I don't know who created this kind of system, but I'm not going to lie. That is kind of complicated there to have to know that stuff. All right. So what we, as an admin, what we try to do is before we authorize a call sign, we look it up. We want to make sure, because like, let's say Don was already registered somewhere else. If he's registered somewhere else, we're not going to authorize his registration because he's already registered into the system. Okay. So when you do a query, it'll tell you, okay, call sign, it'll tell you where you're actually, which repeater system you registered through. All right, and I'll show you your terminal information. Okay. Routing, I haven't done this in a long time. Don, do you do any call sign routing when you chat with anybody? I don't.
No, I've never done the call sign routing.
The call sign routing theory was if you wanted to talk to somebody and you didn't know where they were on the system, you essentially put in their call sign into the UR field, which is a destination field. So remember I talked about there being 4 fields in DStar. Those 4 fields are the UR field, which is your destination field. And that's the busiest field. That's where all the action happens. You got your repeat 1, repeat 2, and the my. Those are the 4 fields. All right. So I could put in the UR field W1AST. And when I key up, it finds where W1AST last keyed up, which repeater he was on, and it dumps me onto that repeater. So I don't know if there's been any changes in the call sign routing since when it was created, but that's how it was originally designed. It was designed to be able to contact somebody even if you didn't know where they were. So the UR field, the destination field, that's where all the action happens. By default, if you're just chatting with somebody and you're already connected up to wherever you need to be, you leave that as CQ, CQ, CQ. All right, that's where you leave that. And if you want to change where you want to link, if you want to unlink a repeater, you put a U in the last field, and that will unlink the repeater. So all these commands can be done over the radio. That's the nice thing about this. And another thing I like about DStar is you can field program your radio. You know, the DMR, how easy is it to field program a radio? You know, it's kind of, you know, you gotta put in your programming cable and you gotta essentially load the code plug in. Well, everything on a DStar radio you can do on the fly with the handheld. All right, you can do it all manually. All right. So linking to reflectors. So let's talk about different reflectors. So these are like your talk groups. We have 3, you know, because it couldn't be easy, right? We have 3 different types of systems out there. We have the REF system, which is heavily an ICOM system. That's where all the ICOM based repeaters tend to stay connected to. You have an XRF system and a DCS system. So these are 3 different types of networks that you can connect to. So for example, if you're a DMR user, it's like saying, you know, you're connected to Moto Turbo versus Brandmeister. Have you ever heard of those? They're different networks. So the same thing here with DStar. You have different networks. So for example, Reflector 50 Charlie, that's where I like to hang out, one of the places I like to hang out. If I wanted to link up from scratch, in my radio, I would put REF 050CL. And the English version of this is connect to the, you know, Reflector 050 C, and I want to link that radio to that reflector. That's essentially what that means. Now let's say I want to talk on the Florida reflector. The DCS reflector is 24 Charlie down there. So I put DCS 024CL. Now I'm explaining it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. When you look at the menu in your radio, you will just select it and it's going to automatically put that in there. I'm the kind of person, I like to know the mechanics behind the system. This is essentially what that menu is telling your radio to do. All right. You could also link to repeaters also. So if you want to do KS1R, you do KS1R space BL, meaning that you would link to that repeater. I'll tell you, the UR field is the most complicated place to be in terms of DStar. That's really where it's complicated. So if you just want to have a basic understanding of DStar, just leave your radio as CQ, and you should be good as long as everything is already linked up, or if you're chatting locally on your repeater. All right. I'm not going to get into any more of the call sign routing because I really don't think many people are doing that.
Hey, Cory.
Yeah.
A lot of repeaters that are using the MMDVM, like the hotspots,
yep.
There's a lot of controls you can do right from the microphone instead of going into the UR field.
Oh,
I
are you
use-
saying like from
Like my-
like a
like my
DTMF
hot-
tones?
Yep, my hotspot, I use all DTMF tones. I never use the UR fields because it's like pound disconnects. Just key up and hit a pound. It disconnects you from everything.
Yeah,
If
and
I
you
want
know,
to know, if I want to know what I'm connected to, I just key up and I hit a 0. That'll tell me what I'm connected to at the time.
yeah,
Um,
and a lot of people are more comfortable with that. You know, it kind of sounds like the comfort zone of like when you operated Echolink, right? When we were
Yeah,
on
it just-
Echolink back in the day, we would use DTMF keys, and you know, we would know what keys did what. So you can, instead of having to go in the menu, that's a great point. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, just
you can
it's
use
not really
DTMF.
advertised anywhere that these devices will do that, you know, and that the radios can
Yeah.
do DTMFs with them. But I do it for everything. Like if I want to connect to a repeater, I just key up, hit star 050 C, and then it'll connect to 50 Charlie.
Very good. The audio testing, we call it echo testing. So you want to enter the E in the last field. So if you're on Reflector 50 Charlie and you want to do an echo test, you have to change it to 50 echo. So you key up, you do your KU1U testing on DStar. You unkey, and then that's going to repeat the audio back to you, kind of like the equivalent of parrot on DMR. That's essentially the same thing. It's going to repeat back the audio. So the repeat one field, think of this on how do I go into the system? So you're programming. So this is the second field that you program. So the first field, so we got 4 fields, right? The destination field, we got the repeat one, repeat 2, and the my field. My is the easiest because that's your own call sign. But repeat 1 is how you're going into the repeater. So if I was getting on the W1 NPP 440 meg repeater, I would put W1 NPP, that's the call sign of the repeater, and I would put B in the last field. That's the band the repeater's on or assigned to. Okay. So you got to be very careful with your placement. There are 8 field placements in these. You got to be very specific. Like if I did W1 NPP space B and keyed up, wouldn't work. It's like the equivalent of having a wrong frequency in your thing. It's not going to work. W1 NPP, and then you put B in the last field. Your repeat 2 field, how are you coming out of the system? So by default, we end this with a G. The G means gateway. So think internet gateway. So you'd put W1 NPP space G. All right. I usually leave this on as a default. Now, let's say you have somebody that's just talking locally and they don't want to, go across the internet or whatever. They would leave the repeat 1 and 2 field as B because they're just staying on a localized repeater. It can be kind of aggravating, and that's one of the rookie mistakes that people might accidentally make when they get on DStar. You'll get on and you'll be listening to a conversation. You're like, I'm only hearing half the conversation. You get 2 people on a repeater and they're talking to each other. They hear each other fine because they're on the same repeater. At that point, it doesn't even matter what you actually have programmed in your radio because they're on the same repeater, so they hear each other. But when somebody's listening on a hotspot or on a different repeater, they're only hearing half the conversation because somebody forgot to put G in the repeat 2 field. All right. So the programming here is, like I say, it's only 4 fields we're dealing with, but you don't have all that inundation of code plugs to worry about and receive talk groups. I mean, this is the brunt of it. If you can get beyond this is the difficult learning curve, is just the programming. Just those, learn to navigate those 4 fields. Okay. And then the my field, that's your own call sign. Okay. So that's what you put in there. So that's the easy field. GPS data, we talked about how that is sent out. 3,600 bits of data is used in that 6.25 kilohertz allocation. All right. Some older radios don't have GPS built in. You'll have to find a way to interface an external GPS to get those working. Text display. We already kind of covered that. All right. You can. It's good to identify who you are. Like if you're doing an assignment somewhere, you could put Oxford Shelter, or you could do Oxford Aries. You could put kind of location to identify where you are, because when you key up, that's going to be transmitting out. All right. You can also send direct text messages, whether it's through a DRATS, or you can use the MS1A software. You can actually send text messages over the repeater to each other. There's a QSO logging field. If you want to record a transmission, you can pop in a little micro SD card, and then you can record the conversation. Go back. That actually might be good during an event. Let's say you've got an emergency going on or something. Boy, it's a great way to capture all the events of what happened, and you can archive that if you wanted for training purposes. CCS routing, DTMS stuff, we're not going to get into. DRATS, that's another offshoot of what you can do with DStar. It's free software that you can operate over RF. They call those reflectors instead of a reflector. You can start, interfacing POP email, WinLink messaging, chat. You can start to get creative and branch out with all this sort of stuff. That's kind of you can exchange files, send those over DRATS. All right, here's another example of the messaging. You can send out messages to other users. It goes across the RF, the RF reflector. Again, there's mapping in there as well. They do have their own self-contained station maps that you can use. Dashboards. So, when you think about a dashboard on your vehicle, it's a source of information. And I've already shown you 2 different types of dashboards. You have that dstarusers.org, which, shows if you're looking for somebody, you can kind of glance at, where users are hanging out. Shows recent activity. But then you actually have reflector dashboards, which we showed you earlier. And then there's also dashboards for the repeater itself. So we do have different types of dashboards out there depending on what you're trying to achieve. That's just another view of the a Google map if you clicked on an orange call sign. GPS data, it's really helpful if you're at a public service event, especially. You can actually see it pop up when somebody keys up. You can find all that, or you can look at the APRS IS information. Data cables. All right, you can plug these into your radio and interface them with like a smart device as well. That way, if you plug it into your smartphone or a little tablet, it allows you to do some other stuff. All right, slow scan TV. How interesting would that be? If you like doing slow scan TV, you can do that on DStar. Okay, this is an example of DStar TV. Somebody's sending a slow scan TV image using DStar. They're doing that on 1.2 gig band. And the last thing I want to talk about is, if there is some poor decoding, a term you might hear is called R2D2. I've got a picture of R2D2 here because that's what they refer to it when you hear that audio stream and it sounds a bit garbly. They call it R2D2. That's the phenomenon. So lots of information. Sorry, I probably rushed through that faster than I should have, but I didn't know if it was a 1 hour time frame. I want to make sure I got things in there. Let me stop sharing here. So are there any questions that people, I know people probably have more questions than when they started, right? You're like, oh my goodness, I'm more lost than when I started. lot of information. But the other thing I didn't talk about was, DStar HF. That's the really cool thing is, you can't do that with DMR. You can't do that. Well, you can do it on System Fusion, but only on 10 meters. That's the only place 10 meters will allow that much bandwidth. So essentially, DStar, you can use that on 160, 80, not 80, sorry, technically 75, right? So 160, 75, 40, 20 meters, 17 meters. You can use it on all sorts of different HF bands, which I think is pretty cool. I do hope, though, for the sake of argument, that one day we can get to a common open codec that everyone can use. I mean, we do have some out there. Freedv.org is an open source codec that people can use, but nobody's really embedding them in the radios. I think the only one I've seen is like a Chinese RS918. They have that embedded in the radio itself, so you can use that digital codec. But anyway, I'm done rambling. Thanks for bearing through it. Hopefully, it's throw the things at the wall, and if something sticks, great. If you got any questions, you can always contact me by email. My email is goodandqrz.com.
The DStar is kind of interesting. I've tinkered with it a little bit on the 705 and talked through the local repeaters in Agawam and Vernon and seen the GPS position pop up. I've also found out that the 705 has a built-in hotspot, and I was talking through I guess a reflector in Hamburg, New York, which is out near Lake Erie along Route 90, and that was kind of interesting. Tinkering right now with what the rig can do, and have a lot to learn, but it's pretty neat. It's I gotta start programming the memories and everything once I find stuff that I like. But there's a lot of people with 705s out there, and DStar is something that you can do with the 705. The radio is pretty incredible with the things it'll do. But anyways, anybody have any questions or comments, or go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you. Number one, Cory, thank you for the presentation. Unfortunately, I was also multitasking. I had a Aries net that I had to also check in because I'm the net coordinator, so I probably should. But I'm going to definitely watch the rest of this on the recording. But on Tuesday evenings, the Newport Radio Club has a DStar net from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock on Reflector 69 Charlie. I used to check in that occasionally. I haven't in quite a while, but that can be fun also. Thank you again, Cory.
Well, thank you. And geez, what, twice in a week maybe? You were at the, as I see you on the Mount Tom meeting, I was over there. See, I'm here, there, and everywhere.
Well, I'm Assistant Section Emergency Coordinator for Western Mass Aries, Skywarn NCS, and direct input to the Skywarn group. So I'll be real busy Friday night into Saturday, probably running some nets on that. I'm trying to coordinate that while I'm on this net and on the radio for the Aries net. I was trying to coordinate Skywarn.
So
yes,
it's funny that you say the Sky, talking about that kind of stuff. Skywarn is, they've been meeting on 50 Charlie to exchange weather information as well. So that's another place you might be able to, exchange data as well.
yeah, I'll have to check that out. There's actually three DStar repeaters in Agawam, all three bands. And
Is that W1KX? Not
W1
KX, something KK.
W1KK.
okay,
KX in the mind. He's NTS operator who lives next to me. But yeah, KK.
yeah, and I've just got one of them's just local, and one of them's set to 69 Charlie. I think I'm not sure, but I got to talk to the person in charge and see what's the proper protocol on those two. Because I can hit that from home, from work. I work at Barnes Airport in Westfield, and I can see Proven Mountain and Mount Tom from where I work. So I've just got to get into it more because I've got the 51, the 52, the 41, the 705, the 9700. So I might have a couple of DStar units.
So the one like the one in New Hampshire, they'll keep their 2-meter one linked to 30 Charlie, which is like kind of southern US. And then they'll link the UHF one to the 50 Charlie, which is like the New England repeater. So,
Is there a list somewhere that describes all the different reflectors and the rough
there
area?
is,
that
if
they
you
do?
go to, let's say DStar info, hold on, it's DStar info, DStarInfo.com, I believe has, you click on reflectors and there you go. It's right there. Hold on. Got the link. Let me copy it in here.
Cool, cool. How many people
that
out
will-
here are on DMR or have DMR radios? And I know there's quite a few of us. And how many have DStar radios now? So I don't know how many have systems.
I would say
fusion, too.
DMR is, there are probably more DMR users than DStar users.
Well,
Just
right,
because
the cost is like a third.
the cost is, a lot less. There's also something interesting, you talk about interoperability. There's something called XLX reflectors, and that's kind of a multi-protocol. So you can come in on DMR, DStar, Fusion, whatever, and it kind of gets you to the same point. So that's something to look
I
at.
think that's the reflector connector I saw in Western New York was one of those XLX.
Well, hey, thanks for having me.
Gee,
And,
what a great presentation, Cory. It really, the care that went into it, and it was so well organized. I really appreciated it.
And I felt like I felt like I was boring you guys. I hope I didn't bore you too much, because I'm just like, I'm an instructor by trade, so I'm always gauging the facial reactions of people, and I couldn't tell if it's like, oh God, did this guy even take a breath? He won't stop talking. Like, I don't know. It's just, I'm trying to get everything in the time frame, and but it's something I'm passionate about. I really do enjoy it. If you ever want, a lot of you have 705s. Hey, maybe you can have a DStar HF net and just, once a month or something, and we can try getting on and try getting on DStar and see how it works.
Cool. Well, something to tinker with. I'm about
Cory,
a third of the way
have
through the
a
manual on
question.
that.
Yes.
I may have missed it, but I noticed, I get a notice that apparently there is a little bit of HF DStar activity, but it seems to be spotty when I've tried to check in or something. I haven't heard it. I mean, can you just, do you have any info on just how active HF DStar is?
I don't know how, so my 20-meter beam broke and I haven't fixed it. So I've actually been hanging out on 75-meter DStar. I hang out on 3725 sometimes, which I don't like where they put that because it's in the extra portion of the band. But the reason I hang out there is because the primary DStar frequency, which is 3880, is like right where AM is, and AM is popular up here. So I don't want to intrude on the AMers. So I go down to 3725 and use it. But if we do some listening, and maybe we can,
3725 was my first novice crystal.
oh, there you go. But if anyone wants to try 3725 with me sometime, shoot me an email. We can try doing a little experiment and see how it works.
Okay. Anybody else have any more questions for Cory? Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Cory. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully the weather.
Got to go tend to the family. They're
Maine.
like, will he get off the computer already?
I used to get those. Are you going to join the family now?
All right.
Anyways,
Thank
thank
you,
you very
Cory.
much.
Thanks, Cory.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
night.
you, Cory.
The meeting
Great
was recorded and
presentation.
it'll be up on
Thank
the
you.
HCA website in a few days or within the week if you want to reference back to it. And Cory, you can catch up to him on QRZ. And maybe we'll see you all on or hear you all on DStar one of these days. And the next HCRA meeting is the first Friday of the month at 7:30 coming up in February. And I think 2 weeks from, or a week from, 2 weeks from Friday. I don't have a calendar in front of me. Anyways, everybody have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody. Good luck with the storms.
Yep.